press conference. I'll introduce the head table for you before we get into the official program. From my left, this is Dr. Mark Curtin, former CC member, CC Coordinating Council member. Dr. Norman Nigaki, Dr. Simpson De Silva, Mr. Vincent Alexander, who's our chair, Ms. Olive Sampson, the CEO, and Mr. Lance Carberry. I'll invite Mr. Vincent Alexander to give an opening statement.
Good morning, colleagues at the head table. Good morning, members of the media. Good morning, others who are in attendance. And I would specifically like to recognize the presence of Mr. Hammond, all the way from Light Tongue on the east bank of the Berbice River, someone who has been whose organization has been one of the beneficiaries of the work of Idpada-G. I'll proceed to read the press statement. Vice President Jagdio's tirade on the International Decade of People of African Descent Assembly Guyana, Idpada-G, at his press conference dated 19th of August 2022, is but another attempt to discredit Idpada-G and to vilify its leadership. At recent forum of the African Guyanese attended by him, he posed the question, what has Alexander done with the $100 million given to him on behalf of the people of African descent? Coffee 250's annual forum and its provocative topic, the emerging apartheid state, is but another occasion for him to continue his mischievous crusade of misinformation, lies, and defamation. We are here today to expose him and his malintent. In the first instance, he sought to single out the founders of Idpada-G Incorporated as the beneficiaries of some private company. Idpada-G is a not-for-profit company whose directors were the executive members of Idpada-G, or the Coordinating Council, at the time of the founding of the company. They are volunteers. They are not in receipt of any material benefits from Idpada-G. Some are here today to refute the impression that Jagdio sought to convey of them as being beneficiaries of Idpada-G Incorporated. As a professional outfit, Idpada-G has a secretariat and paid staff. Any reference to salaries is to their remuneration. The ratio of their salaries to the overall budget is in the range of the public sector's entities' salaries to current expenditure ratio. In other words, our ratio in terms of our salaries to the rest of our budget is no different to what would be found in a public sector agency. Mr. Jagdio also sought to convey the impression that their annual salary of approximately $42 million for 2020 was paid to them in circumstances where all they were doing was disbursing to the African Guyanese community $343,000 in grants. This is where Jagdio tries to pull off his biggest three-card trick on the Guyanese public. Firstly, Idpada-G is not generally funded to provide grants, so we're not a grant agency. So any reference to us about grants as if we haven't done our task is misinformation. However, In late 2018, a sum of 10 million, I repeat 10 million, was specifically provided by the Ministry of Finance for grants to the African Guyanese community, the bulk of which was disbursed in 2018 and 2019. So that's not a parallel subvention. That's a grant on the side, a one-off grant. A residual sum of approximately 343,000, the amount that Jagyo referred to, was disbursed in 2020. So that appears in our 2020 statement. To suggest that a subvention of 10 million in 2020, to suggest that of a subvention of 100 million in 2020, the community was merely the beneficiaries of the grant to the tune of 344,000 is either malicious or gross incompetence in relation to the understanding of the financial situation of Idpada-G. Although the relevant financial documents were requested and obtained from Idpada-G on the morning of Mr. Jagdio's press conference. As early as 8 on that morning, we got a call directing and demanding that we deliver documentation on the organization, which documentation he sought to use at his press conference, in fact, to misuse. Such was Idpada-G's openness and efficiency in providing documents, only for them to be misused by the Vice President. With regard to what the staff is paid to do, Idpada-G staff is in the first instance paid to give service to the African Guyanese community. Members of the public can walk in and be given services such as the preparation of business plans, projects, and grant request proposals for government and donor funding. So our staff is at the disposal of the community. That's what they're paid to do in the first instance. The sum that Mr. Jagdio did not mention goes towards projects in the sphere of education and training, disaster response, public education, entrepreneurial facilitation, and youth development, to mention a few. So that's where we really work. And that's how the African Guyanese community really benefits from the work of Idpada-G, not through grants. Examples including the $5 million exercise to register persons for flood relief. Idpada-G, when there was the flood relief, got complaints from the community that they were being bypassed. And we mounted an exercise that cost us $5 million to identify persons who had been bypassed. And we did this with the knowledge of the Ministry of Agriculture. So those examples will be provided on the work of Idpada-G by the next presenter. So you'll get a wider understanding of the work we do when the next presenter speaks to you. Also, a more comprehensive fact sheet will be made available to you. Mr. Jagdio, therefore, grossly misrepresented the work that is done by Idpada-G and how its subvention is spent on its engagement with the Guyanese of African descent. Every cent of Idpada-G's subvention or other revenue is spent in service to the Guyanese community, directly, as in the case of salaries, or indirectly through programs, projects, engagements, and financial assistance. We therefore call Mr. Jagdio to board for the misinformation, be it innocently so or maliciously so, that he has sought to bring to the Guyanese public about the work of Idpada-G, an organization established in 2018 that got its first grant from the then government, has continued to acquire grants from the present government, and I'm left to wonder what is the objective behind Mr. Jagdio's mischief. You, the press, and others may have observed that on the occasion of the swearing-in of the latest appointee to GCOM, I was photographed whispering into the ears of the president. I was whispering to him a reminder that he had undertaken about a month ago to meet with Idpada-G. Because if there is any weakness in the work of Idpada-G, is our failure to have sufficient engagement and dialogue with the state about policies that need to be put in place in response to the recognition by the world at large, the United Nations, that the people of African descent are suffering a deficit in justice, recognition, and development. And that's not our conclusion. It's the United Nations conclusion. And we have probably not done enough work to speak to government to redress that deficiency. And for that purpose, we're seeking to meet with the president to have such discussions. We have written. He has informally indicated he would meet with us. And I do hope that the tirade of the vice president is not an attempt to ensure that there is no such engagement with the president. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Now invite Ms. Olive Sampson, the Chief Executive Officer of Idpada-G, to make her remarks.
You should go to the mic. Go to the mic. All right. You could recognize it before you start.
Ladies and gentlemen, the media, good morning. I would like, before starting to share some information with you about the work of Idpada-G, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the parents of Joel and Isaiah Henry, whose family and community were recipients of support from Idpada-G. Good morning to you, Mr. and Mrs. Henry. Good morning, Ms. Johnson. As Chair has already pointed out, and I'd like to reiterate, Idpada-G is not a grant agency. A single grant fund of 10 million Guyana dollars was provided by the Ministry of Finance in 2018. Funding was awarded as follows. In 2018, $8,911,254 was disbursed. In 2019, $896,043 were disbursed. And finally, in 2020, the remaining balance was awarded, $343,773, accounting for the entire $10 million award that was given to us in 2018 by the then Ministry of Finance. In spite of not receiving a line item for grants, Idpada-G has sought to be responsive to the community, awarding small grants to support worthwhile activities with broad economic impact. For example, the Mocha Market Day and CSEC Night Schools. Those are just two examples. A list of funded projects is available. We have spent money for capacity building. Expenditures for capacity building in 2018 amounted to $22,386,555. In 2019, $44,324,848. In 2020, 11,762,671. Tuition assistance scholarships to secondary and tertiary level in 2018, $1,879,036. In 2020, $2,083,751. And in 2020, $1,846,140. Night schools. $3,048,000 for CSEC classes to reopen night schools closed after 2020 to support the reopening of those night schools. We have focused a lot of our effort in capacity building. I'd like to just provide some information about our work in respect to capacity building. Firstly, entrepreneurial skills training and development. 77 graduates on how to submit successful bids. 232 applicants. Let me repeat that. 232 small contractors applied to Idpada-G when we put out our notice that we will be offering this training program online during COVID. We have so far held 6 sessions. We keep the sessions small so that they can have individual attention. And of that number, 77 persons have graduated. The program continues in 2022. 33 small businesses assisted by a 2-day workshop in collaboration with ICA on costing, packaging, and marketing for micro and small business in preparation for the UJAMA 2.0 exhibition and sale that you may have seen on Main Street on July 21st and 22nd. On July 21st and 22nd, 132 businesses were featured at, let me repeat that, 132 businesses were featured at UJAMA 2.2 and 32 businesses were featured at UJAMA 0.1, an exhibition and sale for small businesses. It should be noted that the expenses for these sales and exhibitions were underwritten to the tune of 95%, so that small businesses had very little outlay to participate. We provided all that was required: tents, tables, tablecloths, chairs, cleaned the spaces, cleaned up before, cleaned up after, and as I pointed out earlier, provided training for those interested prior to the UJAMA 2 event on Main Street. Since our inception in 2018, 4,310 business owners have been provided technical assistance through 4 one-stop business conferences, 10 mega family and business conferences held 2018, 2019, and January 2020 in regions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10. Speakers and advisors represented the Commercial Registry, Small Business Bureau, Tourism, New GMC, GRA, NIS, IPED, and Citizens Bank. They sent resource persons and speakers who assisted the participants at these conferences in all of the regions that I just listed. 403 food vendors improved their food handling skills and learned about the importance of obtaining food handling certification, and also gained enhanced business practices and technical assistance from a series of conferences held for them. The expertise and the resources, the information for these conferences were provided by the Ministry of Public Health, the National Bureau of Standards, SBB, New GMC, GRA, Commercial Registry. And these opportunities for food vendors were held in regions 2, 3, 6, and 10. 1,017 small farmers participated in capacity building conferences with technical assistance provided by NARI, GLDA, SBB, Fisheries, New GMC, and the Co-op Department. These conferences were held in regions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10. We also are very involved with youth development. We have held leadership training for youth. 46 youth participated in a 2.5-day long intense leadership training program. So during COVID, 20 online programs entitled Spill the Facts were conducted weekly. They focused on capacity building, entrepreneurship training, African Guyanese and Guyanese history writ large, life skills, and other cultural opportunities for our young people. 32 young entrepreneurs promoted their businesses during COVID. In December 2020, via a hybrid business expo, Idpada-G paid for video ads for each of the participating businesses so that they took away from this expo an ad that they can then use online or on television so that they could continue their businesses during COVID and beyond. Those costs entirely borne by Idpada-G. Participants had absolutely no expense. $4,532,458 were spent in 21 and 2022 for an investathon for young entrepreneurs. They received mentoring in the run-up to the investathon to improve their business skills, improve their business plans as well, and in the end, the winning participants received awards for up totaling $1,325,000. To put on those events and youth conferences in 2019, 2020, and 2022, it cost Idpada-G $3,217,558. 650 youth have participated in our youth conferences. In 2021, we conducted a flood relief survey. That survey reached 3,868 persons. This survey was conducted to address the disparities in government relief distribution. A full report, including names of the affected persons and contact information, was submitted to the Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that persons eligible for relief would be assisted. The cost of this survey was $4.9 million. And I need to reiterate that it was as a result of calls from our community that persons of African descent felt that they were not being included fairly in the distribution of flood relief. They were not being visited, or if they were visited, there was no follow-up from the visit. Hence our intervention, hence our submission to the Ministry of Agriculture, a full report with all of the contact information so that those persons' needs could be met. The ministry has been approached for feedback and on follow-up. We have gotten from time to time some reports, but not a full accounting that all of those 3,868 persons have received the flood relief that they should. We have also, during COVID, provided humanitarian assistance and beyond. So it's not only during COVID, but beyond. And I'd just like to throw out a few examples. In 2020, we provided 107 hampers to vulnerable elderly citizens. We provided, during the 2021 flood, we provided relief to some persons. We provided relief to 106 persons to be exact. Hampers and assistance in restocking their poultry, so chicks, seeds, seedlings, and farm implements, to name some of the things that we provided. I'd like to touch on this. It's painful because of the presence of the Henry families, but I'd like to note that immediately following the horrendous murder of their sons, we visited the Henry families immediately, and we subsequently provided 3 months of professional counseling, not only to the Henry families, but made available to the entire community. professional counseling for 3 months to help those families to deal with the horror of the loss of their children, their friend, relatives. That counseling was provided because none was offered, none was forthcoming from the government, from the Ministry of Human Services. We've been approached for assistance, for example, in the case of a young mother who was very, very, very ill and could not find a cure for her medical condition in Guyana. She was completely bedridden and very close to, well, it appears, to death. I'm not a physician, but that is my impression based on the written materials we received. We supported, could not provide all that she needed, but supported her in her effort to get to Cuba to get medical care, which she has. And as far as I have heard, she is recovering, albeit slowly. We've also been approached from time to time by people who are in desperate circumstances, or persons who are aware of Idpada-G and also aware of persons whose situations are untenable and that they really need assistance. And in those cases, we have provided hampers, rent assistance, moving expenses, particularly for women and children facing homelessness and hunger. One of the areas where Idpada-G has done a lot of work, and that is very important under the UN theme of recognition, is the area of preservation and teaching of African history. We have, over the years, conducted seminars. In 2018, we conducted a seminar for 235 teachers who we brought to Georgetown from all across the country for a one-day seminar. History conferences and seminars we've conducted. We've conducted and paid for, and at times received also voluntary contributions of research and documentation of, for example, the purchased plantations, lands purchased, origin of place names, and therefore the legacies of slavery with which we live every day in ignorance. But there are many places around us that celebrate persons who enslaved Africans, and we need to know when that exists. We created a history exhibit that has been on display at the Emancipation Celebration at number 53 Village, when there was a national celebration there, and also at the National Library and at the National Museum. That traces our history from the earliest times on the continent of Africa all the way through to not only our emancipation, but beyond. So that, I should mention in passing, that exhibit also displays something that few people are aware of. One, that Brick Dam was constructed by people of African descent, entirely enslaved people, as was our Parliament building. The Parliament building in which our Parliament sits was built by people of African descent who are yet to be paid. We also, in part of our research, have published in the newspapers and online on more than one occasion lists of persons of African descent and their contributions to our society. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Sampson. I now invite Dr. Mark Curtin, former Coordinating Council member, to give a few remarks.
Good morning, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope that the whisper that Vincent spoke about would go much louder, and to ensure that mature and reasoned dialogue be the order of the day, especially in an environment in which we need to de-escalate these tensions. They are present with us. And I believe that it is important for all to become engaged in this very important exercise. I was a bit concerned myself as a former member of the executive of Idpada-G, having been invited to participate, that I heard very unfortunate, I would call them, to use a in a light word, unfortunate statement by a leading member of the political directorate of this country that we are engaged in a sense, being beneficiaries of largesse or taxpayers' money that came directly to us. Immediately, I would like to say to all, to Guyana, that I have received no pecuniary or non-pecuniary benefit from my participation in the activities of Idpada-G. And I'm confident that the kind of work which was being done and clearly articulated by Ms. Sampson was to benefit the people of African descent, who indeed, that decade which was proclaimed by the United Nations sought to address some of the deficiencies which appeared over the years. And some of the concerns, I think, were just that you need to have a recognition of the condition, to indeed to look at development of this particular ethnic group, and to reduce the racial prejudices which constrain the same thing we talk about, unity and the development of one people and one nation and one destiny in Guyana. I believe that we need to go beyond this level of conjecture, because what I heard was limited information or no information, but rather an effort to perhaps discredit those who, like myself, were attempting to contribute meaningfully, not only to this cause, but to ensure that in the process that we move towards a higher level of understanding and unity, which I think is necessary in these times for all of us as Guyanese. I'm also of the view that when we look at what has been done with limited funding, with voluntary work of people who use that opportunity to help to empower a particularly marginalized set of people, that we could face this type of onslaught, an attempt to discredit us. And I feel very strongly that we need to have greater dialogue among all of our society to de-escalate this kind of tension which is there. Now, I would like to go further, maybe some might say outside the box, and posit that it may be useful for Idpada-G and its Central Coordinating Committee, which I'm no longer a member for both personal and familial reasons. I lost my loved one, and therefore I changed my approach. But I would say that there should be an effort to interact more closely with an organization which may be in the Indo-Guyanese community. I don't know if it's the Indian Arrival Committee or whatever it is. And to see the extent to which there's common ground which could be used and where the gaps are, to come to a clear understanding of where we have to go as Guyanese. And then I think we might go to the next level, and then to deal with the politicians, bring them together, and to attempt to develop in these trying times, because we see rising cost of living, and it's impacting all. And therefore, my view is that we need to have rational, reasoned dialogue to reduce those inconsistencies which remain with us. And so I would say that I'm proud that I participated in this effort to raise consciousness, to help develop, to recognize that, there's a gap. And I hope that we can all go forward together in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Curtin. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, I now invite you to ask questions, please identify yourselves clearly. Svetlana Marshall, News Source. News Source?
Good morning. Just two questions for now. Could you say of the $10 million grant that you spoke of that spanned from 2018 to 2020, how many persons, how many grants were issued? I know you gave the breakdown. And secondly, do you think that the statements by the country's vice president is an indication that well, here our government may be setting the stage for a possible reduction in subvention? Do you think, what's your take on that?
We do have the fear that that may be his agenda. So we do entertain that fear. And as I said earlier, we entertain the fear that he's trying to drive a wedge, not only among the African Guyanese organizations and between Idpada-G and the community, but between Idpada-G and the president, who's intimated his intention to dialogue with us. I'll ask the CEO to respond to the first question.
Thank you. The $10 million grant was disbursed and awarded to 10 recipients. The recipients were cooperatives. The majority of them were cooperatives and individual small businesses. In each instance in the small businesses, we sought to ensure that they, one, reached out and embraced their surrounding community in bringing in persons for training and employment. So we wanted to make sure that the impact of the grant reached as many persons as possible.
This also covers the executable case, right? Just to supplement what the CEO has said, one of the cooperatives to which we gave a grant was the Essequibo Regional Cooperative Union. Essequibo Regional Cooperative Union. That grant took the form of furniture, tents, and information technology equipment. Sadly, they no longer have access because the current Minister of Labor forcibly took away the building which they were inhabiting, and so they no longer have access to the equipment and the furniture which was granted to them. Bearing in mind that the building in question was a building built by a private businessman who had previously occupied their property in Annie Regina, and as a trade-off built that building for them, for the co-op. That building is now occupied by the Ministry of Labor, and the regional body has absolutely no access to the building and the granted equipment and furniture therein.
Any other questions?
Yeah, that sounds a little strange. My first question would have been, what's the relationship, Adam Harris, what's the relationship between Idpada-G and ACDA and Coffee 250? And this building takeaway that you talk about, are you saying that the co-op union has no recourse?
Idpada-G is better referred to as a country coordinating mechanism for the International Decade for People of African Descent. As the country coordinating mechanism, Idpada-G brought together, or brings together at this time, over 60 African Guyanese organizations. So it's really like an umbrella organization for the African Guyanese community with specific reference to the work of the decade. And ACDA, Coffee 250, PANAF, they're all members of Idpada-G. As I said, Idpada-G's membership spans about over 60 organizations, and these organizations are both geographic, so it's across the entire country, as well as their sectoral, cultural organizations, economic organizations, religious organizations. So it's an all-embracing umbrella for the African guidance community in their response to United Nations Declaration. It's incorporated as a company, and the members of that company would be those 68 organizations. What was the recourse? Just
Second, Dennis.
The recourse for the co-op for having the building taken away, having done access to the equipment.
well, I suppose there are various ways that they could have recourse, and unfortunately, as far as I know, they have not, in fact, been very active in seeking that recourse. But suffice to say that given the ministry in question that intervened, and given the public disposition of the Prime Minister, we sought to meet with him, and to date, that meeting has not eventuated. The last time he was approached was during the emancipation, on which occasion he said that he would in fact entertain that meeting. And that meeting with him is not only about the situation with the co-op building, it's also a meeting about the situation with the IT equipment that was removed from the community center in Queenstown, hence making the hub, the IT hub in Queenstown, dysfunctional.
Yes, Dennis Shibral, Mr. Alexander, why didn't your organization allocate more funds to organizations on a broader or wider basis? And secondly, what is your evaluation showing about the success of some of the initiatives that you referred in your opening remarks?
Let me repeat, as has been said, we're not a grant organization. We operate under a number of sub-teams: education, employment, economics, expiation, and equity. All of the work we do under those heads, including the youth. So that our focus is not necessarily allocating funds to organizations. Our focus is organizing activities to benefit the entire African Guyanese community, and our organizations are used to mobilize people to access those activities. So our organizations are conduits, more or less, to the wider community to which we seek to give service. So we're not a grant body. However, what we have done every year during the Emancipation Month, each organization is entitled to apply for a particular sum for activities that are beneficial to their communities. This year in particular, with a number of organizations applying, out of the 68, we have allocated no less than 100,000 to each of those organizations for community activities.
Evaluation, I was asking what your evaluation has been showing you about the initiatives which you have financed or contributed to.
Well, certainly we as I said in my presentation, we in fact use Lightong as an example of the success of our work, where they have a co-op and they've been able to move from ground zero to an extensive involvement in farming and in poultry. And there are other such examples that we have. We are proud of the fact that we are able to fund the night schools, which have brought back children into the loop of the education system. And this we do both in Georgetown and in Quarantine. So that's another instance of the outreach. Many people would know of the work that was done in terms of the Mocha Arcadia Market Day, which we also funded and initiated. Many people would know of the exhibitions we've had both at the Square of the Revolution last year and in the Avenue this year. So these are public manifestations of the work that we are doing, and we do in fact get feedback from groups of people who have benefited from the disbursements that we have made towards activities in and for the communities.
May I add, Chair, to that for all of our training programs and all of our events, we do an evaluation form. We get feedback from participants so that we can we work towards constant improvement, and we rely on that feedback to improve. And so I would like to bring that to your attention, that we do maintain an evaluation policy, a feedback policy, so that we can monitor our work and seek constant improvement.
Just
Might I, Simpson de Silva, might I just add to what Comrade Chair and Sister CEO said? I remember vividly that Dr. Nigui and myself and some others, we did supervise, monitor, and evaluate work done or support we gave to people in Region 6, Region 5, Region 4, Region 3, Region 10. And there clear evidence of growth and development that occurred. We at Idpada-G made sure that somehow in our giving of assistance in whatever little that we have based on the finances available, that we focus on the sustainable development of those communities. We try to create micro models, if it were, in agriculture, because our focus still is in agriculture, apart from whatever else was mentioned. And we have evidence of great success in and around the country. We sacrifice tremendously, all of us, voluntarily, and if I might repeat, without pay. We did go all over the country, try our best to help the people. So it is very sad to hear, or assumptions that are being made, that there are these volunteers who have been working tirelessly night and day to help people of African descent in Guyana, and we sometimes reach out to other groups, because when we give advice and when we held the seminars and workshops, we didn't restrict anyone who would come, because the people heard and they knew that we were giving very valuable guidance and advice, and they all came. So I just wanted to say that we hit in 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, even during the time of COVID, we did not sit back on our laurels. Although we were not being paid, we reached out virtually and in hybrid sessions all over this country to help our people. So I hope that whoever is hearing, and we will do a better job with respect to our visibility, because wherever we go and assist, we should have signs up in the air so people can see clearly, and we would ask our people to spread the word in a better way. But I must admit, we have gone above and beyond the call of duty, free of cost.
Yes, I'm Norman Nugukui. I'd just like to add a little bit to what Dr. Simpson has said, and to reinforce the whole concept of volunteerism. Right? The last 9 years, 10 years, have been the most satisfying, personally satisfying time of my post-retirement years. Right? The service to the community that we have provided, and I need to emphasize that I am not and have never received any salary or dividends or any sort of thing like that from Idpada-G. I am a 100% a volunteer. And this is not the only organization I do volunteer service in. So it was very disappointing for me to hear what was said. I still don't understand that. I understand the motives, but I just don't understand somebody just deliberately making those kinds of misrepresentations. So I just needed to be sure that everybody knows, because my name was listed very specifically, right? And to let them know very clearly that I am a 100% volunteer on a number of organizations and have never received any salary or dividends or anything of that nature from Idpada-G. This personal satisfaction I've received, actually I need to recommend volunteerism to anybody who can afford it. Because, and I say can afford it because these are difficult times, and we have to be realistic. Volunteerism has been so personally satisfying. And the feedback, when I look at things that we have done over the years, and we were talking about 10 years, over the years, when I see young men and I see young women, it is that development, that personal development in individuals over that time, that has been very, very satisfying and gratifying to me. So I would recommend volunteerism, again, as being a feature. It used to be a feature of Guyanese society, where people volunteered. Instead of being everything, but wants, what's in it for me, what's in it for me. But volunteerism has been able to think back of service to the community and how we can contribute to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. Thank you.
Just two follow-up questions. I know the subvention varies, I think, for the last... Yeah. Could you say, as an estimate, on average, what percentage of the budget counts for programs and projects that target the African communities? And with respect to the night school, could you also indicate how many beneficiaries, how many persons would have gone back to night school and would have benefited through your kind intervention?
You may have noted that for 2020, 42 million was quoted as salaries. So in terms of salaries, it's 42 million. We will have administrative expenses like paying for utilities and rentals and things like that. And the remainder goes directly to our programs and our projects. So I would say that somewhere in the vicinity of 40 to 50% goes directly to our programs and our projects. But we have to be careful in that analysis. Idpada-G is a labor-based organization, manpower-based organization. And so if somebody comes into Idpada-G, for us to help them to develop a project proposal, that is a salaried person doing the work of service to the community. So we cannot simply see salaries as salaries separate and apart from delivery of service. because we deliver service through our employees who are in direct contact with and provide outside of projects, outside of programs, service to the community in various ways. One significant way being that you can come to Idpada-G, we can help you to look for funding for a project that you might have. We can help you to develop the project proposal and things like that. So we do not see salaries as something extraneous to the work and service to the community. And so we take umbrage when people attempt to separate out those salaries as if there's a set of people collecting money for nothing and it's not beneficial to the community. What they do is beneficial to the community. For example, we have committees, economics committee, education committee, and those committees. It is the staff who work with those committees to realize the programs of those committees. If we're going to publish something in the papers, for example, on free emancipation or for Black History Month, it's a staff member who has to do the research. Now, they aren't paid for that as a special exercise, but they're doing the work which is in fact the core work of the organization when they do that research. So we have to see our salaries in that context. But that notwithstanding, we spend about 55% directly in terms of the programs and projects that benefit directly the communities.
Ivor Wharton, Capital News. The Mocha Arcadia Multipurpose Group is one of the organizations that you have assisted in terms of hosting of a market day. I know that some of their residents would have benefited from agro-processing training and stuff like that. But now that they're unable to go back to their lands as a result of flooding and so on, what sort of assistance or representation has the organization been able to make in seeing them being able to go back to those lands and to utilize the assistance that you would have made available to them?
Thank you very much. I'm glad you noted that one, we have played a significant role in that market day, and two, that it's not just the market day. We arrange training for those people, and so, for example, one of the products one could have gotten at the market day was chicken ham, because we arranged that training, and so they were able to acquire skills that allow them to be involved in meaningful activities. There are problems that have arisen in relation to the drainage. I'm sorry that one of our members from the community is not here, but we have been persistently talking to the government about the resolution to that problem. And on the occasion of the swearing-in of the GCOM commissioner, I had a 2-minute sit-down with the president, and that was one of the issues I raised. And he promised to send NDIA in to once again address the problem because they'd been in there on numerous occasions. My latest feedback is that some work has been done, but the work that has been done would not suffice. There's need for more work. The excuse we were given, we were told when the same VP met with the African Guyanese Association, Entrepreneurial Association, was that there's a problem of interrelationship between state agencies. So you have the Ministry of Housing doing one thing and blocking up canals and things like that in this housing drive, to the detriment of drainage and irrigation and affecting agriculture. So there's a need for coordination between those two ministries. But housing seems to be trumping everybody else, and agriculture seems not to be able to do what they're supposed to do to help the farmers. But we have consistently been acting with the government directly and through the co-op in an effort to get that issue resolved.
Zina Henry, Kaicher News, good morning. For clarity, can you state the allocations for the organization per year from 2018. Also, the Vice President indicated, he insinuated a lack of accountability, stating that the agency's auditing was being done by a private agency, although taxpayers' money was involved. Can you clarify that for us, please?
Yes. Thank you for the question. First of all, in the first year of our existence, we got 68 million from the government. We subsequently approached the then cabinet, and that 68 million in 2019 was increased to 100 million, and we have had no further increase, though we've had to carry additional expenses in terms of wages and things like that, and the cost of materials and so have gone up, but we have had no further increase. So we had, in fact, requested an increase, and in the request for the increase, we specifically wanted to get additional money for grant purposes, and we were advised that that request would not be honored, and therefore we have not gotten the specific money for grant purposes. So that's the first aspect. In terms of accountability, we are a registered non-for-profit company. Under the laws of Guyana, such a company is required to have private audits. And we have been doing that. When we do those audits, the reports are available to the government and the ministry in particular. And in fact, it is a misrepresentation of information on one of the audit documents that was being used by the VP. So we do our audits and we make the reports where they ought to be made. But let me go further to say that last year we received a letter from the Ministry of Finance indicating that because of something that was written in the press, and we know how these things happen, that they were coming to do an investigation of our financial status. So they came, they investigated, and they have submitted a report. And I am pleased to say that that report cannot in any way point fingers at any kind of misappropriation or misdemeanor on our part. So we have stood the test of both the required audit by law and the test of an investigation. And we found it rather strange in Guyana, where there's so many accusations and so many matters that are unreported and uninvestigated, that we were the subject of such an investigation, reportedly because somebody wrote in the papers. And having come in December of 2021, the auditors, those investigators, came back in January of 2022. But we are still to hear that there are any accusations that can be leveled at us for our fiduciary responsibilities.
Just one clarity. Can you say which year you applied for an increase so that it could facilitate grant program?
We inquired, the CEO will answer.
Thank you. We applied for an increase in 2020, and 2021 in both years, and we have not received that increase. Yes, we asked for 58 million above the 100 million.
Did you state in your application whether it would have gone towards specific relief?
We listed all of the programs and activities that we wished to conduct very specifically, line by line, and so those activities were not funded.
Also, based on the investigation that was done last year, you're stating that because because of that, the government would have sufficient information to know the activities of the organization?
The government has all the information through that investigative audit about what we have done.
Clarification, Ms. Sampson, you said $58 million, was it? $58 million for both years, or for each year you asked for
58 for each year.
Okay, thank you.
Tamika Rodney, Nightly News. Mr. Alexander, can you say how many paid staff do you have?
20.
20. All right, and on an average, can you say how much money from the subvention would go towards projects?
As I said, we spend about 50% of our subvention on our programs and projects.
All right, thank you.
One quick question. I saw a report that you were so offended that you were threatening legal action against the accusation. Is that still on the cards?
I am in consultation with my lawyers in the matter, and I'm advised that other members are also in consultation.
How long will your consultation take?
Well, the press conference was on Friday. So really, I alerted the lawyers over the weekend, and today, after this press conference, we will be detailing our possibilities.
One last question from me. It would appear that the Coffee 250 theme would have somewhat offended some people because they keep mentioning the issue of apartheid. Can we get some insight into why this theme was chosen, if the relevant person is there to respond?
I'll ask Coffee 250 to respond to that. Incidentally, Dr. Nikki Cree is also of Coffee 250. Suffice to say that, as I have said earlier, for me, the fact that the Vice President, since last year, has been running around asking African Guyanese Fora what Alexander has done with the 100 million suggests that even if there's a peeve about the theme of Coffee 250's conference, that this is merely another occasion to continue what started last year.
Thank you. Yes, since 2013, we have been holding conferences, right? Our first conference on the state of the African Guyanese, right? So, since 2013, and we have never had any letter from any agency, ever, right? Even suggesting that our forum was unconstitutional or illegal. All right, so this came as a total surprise when we saw the letter to the editor from the AG's office, right? Totally out of the blues, because and we have had all kinds of opinions discussed at the different forums. Now, with respect to the theme, resisting the apartheid, the emerging apartheid state, okay? We find it instructive to look at that title. Resisting is what Coffee 250 is about, right? Coffee 250, from the history of coffee and from the African history in the state of Guyana, okay, is about resisting. Now, every human being in Guyana today has been a beneficiary of African resistance. Why I say that? Because it is because of African resistance that we have a slavery, that we had a slavery-free space in Guyana in 1834. All right? It is, let me repeat that. It is because of African resistance that we had a slavery-free space established in Guyana in 1834. And everybody was a beneficiary of that, of those sacrifices. And as I said, and I repeat, we had over 480,000 Africans made a sacrifice before the first indentured laborer came to this country in order to provide a slavery-free space. And that is African resistance, and that is our history. And that is, resisting is a word that we use proudly, right? Now let's look at the other three words. Emerging, apartheid state, which is the other part of the title. We have had opinions on both sides of the word apartheid. Apartheid seems to be a word that conjures up images totally of the horrendous South African experience, all right? So once you say apartheid, people think South Africa, they think of enforced separation and so forth. And we have had opinions on one side that says, and as I said in the press statement, that it is too harsh. It is too harsh, and it is totally unacceptable for our Guyanese situation right now. There's one group of people that think that way. And then there's another group that says it is too weak and unfocused. The title should more be existing apartheid conditions, right? Instead of emerging apartheid conditions. Because to some people, apartheid conditions exist in Guyana. So a conference, and we have never censured the discussion of our conference lecturers. When we invite lecturers, they come, this is the theme, this is the topic, they speak freely. They're allowed and permitted, and they have a right to speak freely about everything. So we never say, what is your opinion about A or B? And if your opinion agrees with ours, then you will speak. If our opinion disagrees with ours, you will not speak. That to us is a violation of the right of free speech. All right? So, and we have never had anybody question our right to free speech in a forum setting, and this is an international forum. This is not people located in Guyana, right? And because of the virtuality, because it's virtual, we have people in England, we have people all over this world who are participating in that conference. So it is impossible, and it is absurd to us to say, what is your opinion before we let you talk? We've never been in that position before. And I need to point out there are views on both sides of that. Some people think and relate only to the South African experience. Some people feel there are existing conditions. It doesn't say the state is the S, the state with a capital S. It says this, there are conditions where state is equivalent to the synonym conditions, right? There are conditions in Guyana that are similar to apartheid. And they name a number of things, right? And they cite a number of things. And there's a whole litany of reasons why some people feel that way. There's also a whole scheme of other opinions why people think the other way. But it is not our opinion. We are not experts on apartheid. We are not experts on how people should feel. And we certainly don't have the right to tell people how to think and what to talk about. Right? People have a right to think what they want to think and have a right to their own opinions and have a right to say whatever they want to say, provided they're not crazy. And we have had forums to international standards, and we've had forums to international standards for years. So this caught us totally by surprise. So we consider something is emerging, but we don't know what it is. Hence, we consult with lawyers to find out if, in fact, our freedom of speech or their freedom of speech, because we have speakers, is at risk, is going to be violated. Again, this is a totally new situation for us. But there are people who have opinions on both sides, and it is not our position to censure anybody, to tell them to think the way we want to think, or we will not allow them to participate in a forum. It's never been the case before. You always have discussions, and people have a right to have differing opinions. You have a right. If you want to sit down to discuss A, you have a right to talk about A. It's not my position as chair to tell you, you should not think this way or you should not have that opinion. It would be absurd of me. So in a Guyanese context, where we think of a democracy, we think of one people, it is absurd to think of telling some people they shouldn't have a right to have a meeting, to have a forum, because I am concerned with this word apartheid, when there are 780,000 people who have opinions which we have to respect. And that's the big thing. There is mutual respect. You have an opinion, I have a right to respect your opinion. I have an opinion, you have a right to respect my opinion. I can't tell you I'll only respect your opinion if your opinion is my opinion. That is un-Guyanese, by the way. That makes no sense. And it came as a total surprise that when something like that was published. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
sir, hold on. Yeah. Why should it surprise you when on podcasts, letters to the editor, comments all over the place, that the government is being accused of racism, that one of the leading lights in the government should come lashing out at the title of your forum?
You say, why should it surprise me? Yeah. Well, it has never happened before. And this is what reverberates, right? We have had the first conference forum in 2013, which is almost 10 years ago, right? We have never had somebody question our freedom of speech, our rights to freedom of speech.
You never accused them of racism either.
No, but I mean, but we are totally taken aback by this emerging concept that one needs to think only what is this way, and there should be nothing you should not have your own thoughts, whatever it is you have, it must only be this way. We've never been faced with that. Personally, it makes no sense to me, because all it means is that I must have the only opinion and you must have no opinion. That is absurd. You have a right to your own opinion. You have a right to freedom of speech. If I am doing something that you don't like, you have a right to tell me, Doc, you're doing something that I don't like. And I have to talk a little bit about this joke. It's not a joke, but it's pretty serious about this right, this freedom of speech and the importance of it. I'll take 2 minutes to talk about this. There was a young man who was going in the bush. Right, so he was in the bush, and he came up got 2 parrots, right? And he bought these 2 parrots, and these parrots were conversation. They talked to one another, right? They could carry on a conversation. They could sing and whistle. They put each other to sleep. They are company to each other. So this young man, his name was Richard. Richard sent the parrots to Georgetown, because his grandmother was alone, right? So he sent the parrots with a friend to Georgetown, and with a note, and the note said, Granny, how are you doing? I'm fine, and I hope you like these parrots. I'm down in 3 months. I'm going to be back in 3 months. Right? Love, your loving grandson, Richard. So, send the parrots. Granny got the parrots. 3 months later, Richard came in. Richard came to town. He says, Granny, I'm back. I'm safe. I ain't got no snake bite me and thing. I'm okay. You like the parrots? Well, Granny looked at him and said, yeah, they tasted good. They tasted good, but they didn't have enough meat, right? But I like them. Of course, Richard hit the roof. Richard goes, Granny, oh my God, I paid $10,000 for these parrots, and I mean, these are good conversationalists. I mean, I sent them for company, and they were. So after Richard came down to ground, he put Granny to sit down. He says, Granny, how could you do this? How could you do this? Well, Granny looked at him as all grannies do. Granny called him Sonny. Granny says, Sonny, I had these parrots for 2 months. This is the 3rd month. They never said a word to me or to each other. I never hear them say a word. So I eat them. In other words, the speech, if you have something that is bothering you, it is important to let it be known. And nobody could talk for you. Because speech is important for your survival. If something bothering you, you say it. Don't go around the place being quiet and hope that things are going to be fine. Because them parrots, they ain't say anything to Granny. And so Granny, I have to tell him something when he asked me if you like them. So and she did. Yeah, they tasted good. Why are you all laughing? You think this is a serious story, but it is important, right, to understand that you have to speak for yourself. Right? Nobody could talk for you. And this idea of sitting and hoping that things will be fine, it doesn't work. Okay. So I'll end with that.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the media, for coming. Thank you to the Henry family and all of the beneficiaries that are here.
Thank you.